Panic attacks suck. I've had 2 of them in my life. And even though it's been years since I've had them, I can remember every detail of those panic attacks because it felt like pure terror. It felt like I was dying, like I was losing control, like I would never get back in control of myself again or feel safe again. And if you've had a panic attack, maybe your experience feels a little bit similar to that. In other videos, I'll go over the symptoms of panic attacks, what panic disorder is, what the best treatments for panic disorder are, what are some things that you can do on your own to take steps towards managing panic attacks, panic symptoms, and living your best life. But I wanted to take some time to help you understand why these happen to begin with, because it feels kind of counter to you being able to go out in the world and function. If you're new or just need a refresher, I'm Dr. Jessica Borshak. I'm a clinical psychologist in California and an expert in acceptance and commitment therapy. So why do we have panic attacks? Now, there are 2 types of panic attacks that we might have. Ones that are specific, that are triggered by something that we can identify, and ones that feel completely random, completely unspecified, and just out of the blue. Those ones can sometimes be the scariest. When it comes to specific panic attacks, those can be in response to something that your mind has determined as a threat. Think you getting in a car accident, or you almost getting in a car accident, and your mind imagining like what could happen. There's that adrenaline rush, and then that just kind of like crashing fear that falls over you. And sometimes that can be big enough to send your body into this level of panic. A close call, a specific phobia. If you're afraid of snakes, for example, and you come across one when you're hiking, your body might just get overwhelmed with fear, and it kind of just shuts down. It's almost like an overactive threat response. Your mind is so scared and so convinced that there's something terrifying happening that it can't regulate itself. It might seem counterintuitive because you're like, well, how can I actually escape a threat or do anything when I'm experiencing this level of panic? But think about it like your body's just having an overreaction. Your body can also have this reaction to a trauma trigger. So for example, if you've had a traumatic event in the past and you encounter something that reminds you of that. For example, when I was 18, I was mugged in a parking lot. I thankfully wasn't harmed. They, took my wallet, my book that I'd gotten at the bookstore. And while I was physically safe, it was a very scary experience for me. I was by myself. I was in an area that I thought and I had felt safe that I'd been to a million times before. And while I wasn't physically harmed, it just ripped open this idea for me that the world is not safe. And so fast forward a couple of months to me going to college for the first time, being in a completely new environment, and forgetting a book that I needed for my homework assignment that night in my car in the parking garage. And the idea of having to go at night to a parking garage, even though it wasn't the same parking garage, caused me to have a panic attack because my mind had associated bad things at night in parking garages. And it can just take one experience for your mind to go, these things aren't safe. Thankfully, it only happened one time. I was able to process it. I was able to practice pushing myself, going to parking garages at night, reminding myself that this place was completely different, that there was nothing inherently evil or threatening or anxiety-provoking about a parking garage. Now, I use safety precautions and things like that because I still was a young woman out about by myself. But these are some of the ways that panic can be triggered. We can also accidentally induce a panic attack. Let's say you've had a panic attack before and you're afraid of having one again. And so as a result, you're hypervigilant about any sign that you're having a panic attack. So you're kind of like hyper-focused, you're constantly scanning your body. And let's say you feel a little tightness in your chest, or your heart rate increased a little bit, or you felt like a little sweaty. Maybe it was humid outside or extra hot that day. But your mind went, oh no, it's a panic attack. And then in response to that, you start breathing really quickly, start hyperventilating because you remember last time you couldn't breathe and you're just all of a sudden sucking in air, which makes you lightheaded, which increases the anxiety, which makes your whole body tense, which makes it even harder to breathe, which makes your body feel shaky now because you've locked your knees and you've tightened your whole body, and you accidentally induce a panic attack. It's one of the reasons why going to therapy can be so useful because it teaches you to understand the difference between something being threatening and something simply being uncomfortable. It teaches you through exposure, through talk therapy, how to develop a different relationship to those sensations so that when they start, instead of increasing the likelihood that you're going to have a panic attack, you can actually decrease the likelihood. You can ride out those early signs. You can do different tools and strategies in the moment so that it doesn't peak into a full-blown panic attack. And then finally, there are the unprompted, untriggered, unspecified panic attacks. These are the ones where you're at home and you're relaxed and things are fine, and then all of a sudden your body just like takes over and freaks out as if something horrible is happening. And you don't understand why it happened. Now, you're most likely to hear these examples in some CEO, founder, entrepreneur's memoir about how they used to be sucked into workaholism and hustle culture and working 24/7. Sometimes panic attacks happen because you've been ignoring signs that you need to take care of yourself for a really long time. You've been staying awake with caffeine. You've barely been sleeping. You're working constantly. You're stressing yourself out. You're taxing your body. And even though there's not one specific moment that triggers the panic attack, it's just kind of like that's built up over time. And eventually, one moment from the next, your body just goes, nope, we're done. It's almost like your body shutting down, but instead of just collapsing and sleeping for 17 hours, your body views it as a threat and goes into a full-blown panic attack. Now, sometimes our panic attacks are triggered by something specific, but we just in the moment don't realize what it is. It's kind of like a subconscious reaction or a subconscious association between something, and therapy can help you work through, process, and identify what might have been the trigger. Work on that so that it's no longer as triggering for you and that association isn't as strong. But if you're having a panic attack, just what feels like completely out of the blue, it might be worth pausing and checking in around, hey, have I been sleeping? How much caffeine am I having? What kind of stimulants am I taking to kind of keep myself awake and focused and alert? Are you taking medication for ADHD and you don't have ADHD, just so you can focus a little bit more? Those things have an impact on your body. Is your whole life consumed by one aspect of your life, one domain of your life? Are you constantly guided by fear that you're going to miss out, that you're not going to be enough? In those situations, yes, panic attacks happen, but they're more a symptom of a larger issue that can be processed by talking to a therapist, talking to loved ones, talking to someone that you trust, and working through different strategies for managing stress better, setting better boundaries in your life and sticking to them, and prioritizing the things that truly matter to you. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more understanding about why you might be having a panic attack and what to do with that information, what your next steps should be. But if you found this video helpful, subscribe and check out the rest of my playlist on panic attacks and panic disorder, because I guarantee you it'll have some extra information in there that you'll find really useful for managing your own panic or for supporting a loved one who's going through the same thing.